Welcome to PWS United, a podcast for the Prader-Willi syndrome community, brought to you by PWSA USA. This podcast gives the latest news in research, advocacy, and family support by bringing together staff, volunteers, PWS treatment specialists, biotech and pharmaceutical representatives, caregivers, family members, and individuals with PWS. Our goal is to share education, awareness, and resources with those living with PWS and their supporters. Join us in our mission to enhance the quality of life and empower those affected by Prader-Willi syndrome.
Adoption has the dimension of connection, not only to your own tribe, but beyond, widening the scope of what constitutes love, ties, and family. It is a larger embrace. By adopting, we stretch past our immediate circles, and by reaching out, find an unexpected sense of belonging with others. Isabella Rossellini. We have a lovely episode today with Rachel Azara, the adoptive mom of Michael, a 6-year-old living with Prader-Willi syndrome. She spoke with Stacy about her family's experience in adopting Michael as a baby, what open adoption looks like, and offers advice and suggestions for how families can look into adoption for themselves. This conversation steers around to how people can support adoption causes like donating to local foster care closets, or being a respite home for infants, and I'm over here vigorously waving my hand for that job, and even donating airline miles for things like medical trips. Rachel and Stacy also discussed the challenges of adoption, like the emotional roller coaster and having to invite social workers into your home. They also discuss how and where to find your people for support, and how Rachel knew Michael was her baby the moment she first held him. We also get to learn what a book shower is, and now I want to retroactively host one for all 3 of my girls, and possibly myself as well. On a tech note, you will hear a brief quiet in the middle of the conversation where it seems like they jump topics, but all I will say to that is that we can put a rover on Mars, but we still can't always depend on a reliable, steady Wi-Fi connection, but the conversation makes sense. November is National Adoption Month, or National Adoption Awareness Month, depending on which site you're looking at. And we want to dedicate this episode to all of the incredible families in our community who have chosen to be here. We are grateful and we support you. Welcome to another episode of PWS United, and please enjoy this interview with Rachel Azara.
My name is Rachel Azara. I actually work for a school district. I'm a director of assessment and systems improvement here in Oregon. In regards to adoption, I'm an adoptive parent of a special little boy. Michael is 6 years old. He'll be 7 in January, and he has the deletion subtype of Prader-Willi syndrome. We were able to have him come into our hearts, my husband and I, when he was 2 months old, and we have a very open and loving adoption with his birth parents who live in Greece.
That's amazing. I didn't realize that you guys had an open adoption process.
Yes.
How is that different than a non-open? What are the differences?
So open, Michael and his birth parents, we know where they live. They know where we live. They know the door is always open. We send letters and pictures and emails and texts. We're in constant contact with them. In that case, Michael very much knows if you ask him how many moms he has or mommies and how many daddies he's had, he will tell you 2 and 2. He's now beginning to understand more about child. He has a really good friend, Luca, who's also adopted. So the 2 of them have really bonded and understand that they have 2 sets of very loving parents. And then someday we will take Michael to Greece because they are back in Greece. They were studying here in the US when he was born, and actually let him see his culture in Greece.
That's amazing. When people consider adoption from both the perspective of placing their child for adoption and then seeking to adopt a child, there's a whole lot of emotions and feelings involved in all of those decisions. Without sharing anything that might be too personal for you, can you tell us a little bit about what that journey is like, and then also how you may help other people? through that?
Sure. Similar when we adopted Michael, one of the things we did was reach out to PWSA USA because we wanted to know about more additional information about Prader-Willi syndrome. We were able to talk to a couple parent mentors that actually have children. They're actually young adults now to kind of give us some background. The one thing I will tell you a little bit about adoption is we felt it was very melancholy. We were excited to be parents after trying for 10 years. We had done infertility treatments, foster care adoption, as well as we had an adoption scheme before Michael. And we wanted the bigger picture to know what our children with Prader-Willi are like and how we could get additional support and who to reach out to for the medical aspects and how to determine how to prepare them for school, as well as just to love and snuggle that baby. When we went up to get Michael and to meet the birth parents in person and the birth grandfather, because we have that open adoption, they actually have gone to medical appointments with us when he was little. And so they very much love him. We very much love him. We actually have the birth mother and I have a necklace with 3 hearts, and one is for Michael, one is for their family, and one is for our family that are interloop that we both wear. And so in the regards of with the adoption of a special needs child, my recommendation is to reach out to the, like Prader-Willi USA, if it's a PWS baby or child, and talk to people and hear their stories and learn as much information as you can. What I have done since we've adopted Michael, when people ask to reach out to someone who is thinking about making an adoption plan, tell our stories and to listen to them without judgment, as well as families that are potentially looking to adopt a baby or child with Prader-Willi, because I think that's the biggest support too, is that they know there's people out there that have had the experience of adopting a child with Prader-Willi. And then I think the other thing that's really helpful is, in my case, I work in education administration, is helping families understand the federal and state rights for their kids in the public school system. So my biggest pieces of advice, I would say, is to reach out to Prader-Willi USA and Foundation of Prader-Willi Research, find that network of people. There are great secret anonymous Facebook groups too, so that you can talk to families and talk to even people that have Prader-Willi to find out more information before you're going to make your decision either to do an adoption plan or to adopt a child with Prader-Willi.
I get chills when you were talking about the necklace. I just think that's so beautiful. What was the most surprising part of the adoption process for you?
I think one of the most surprising is, in our case, once we reached out, at the time it was Special Angels Adoption Agency, and we learned about Michael, and we worked with Jennifer Kelly, who was one of the co-administrators of the agency at the time, how quick it went. So we had a virtual meeting with the birth parents over Zoom. And then within a week, they had decided that, yes, they wanted us to come up and meet them. And we were going to be the adoptive parents. And we drove up from Virginia, where we were living back east at the time, to Connecticut. And the next day, their social worker came and the birth parents came, and we met Michael and the birth grandfather. And I'll never forget that night after we, spent a few hours together and Michael was with us. Aaron and I, my husband, we turned to each other and we're like, okay, what do we do next? Because we were so excited, but we also were very caring and loving with the birth parents. I think that's the other surprising aspect, is we've been very fortunate to have very loving birth parents that deeply care about him, as well as, I think the other thing that surprised us is because we'd had the adoption scam, we didn't really tell very many people we were going up to get Michael, so it was a surprise. And then when you adopt a child from another state, you have to go through what's called ICWA. So all the paperwork has to go back and forth between the two states. And this was in February. And so we got to bring him home actually early March. So February 27th is what we call Indoor Hearts Day. That's when we first met him in 2018. He was almost 2 months old. He was little, almost 7 pounds. And we had to learn how to feed him. We were very fortunate with his birth parents. One of them is a medical doctor, and we learned to feed him. And I think the other biggest surprise was just surprising people on our own.
I bet.
When we finally were able to announce it, social media and talk to people and be like holding Michael, and people are like, whose baby is that? And we're like, this is Michael. We did honor the name Michael. That was his birth parents named him after the birth grandfather. So in Greek culture, it is often the father's father, the first name, and the mother's father, the middle name. So Michael is the birth grandfather's name. And then we added the middle name of my husband's father, which is Isaac, and then he's Azra. So they let us know. They said we could change his name. We didn't. We honored it. They had brought him home and took care of him before we went up and met them. And I think the other things about adoption is that everybody's story is a little bit different. In our case, we're very fortunate, like I said, to have an open adoption.
You mentioned that Michael is aware that he's adopted. So other parents who are considering this journey, how do you suggest they approach those conversations with the child?
So what we have done over time is he has in the nursery, his room now, we have a picture of all of us. And so he, at a younger age, he knew that was Mama Krissa and Papa Panos. And when things would come for gifts for him, because he's born in January, which is close to the holiday season, we would always tell him that this is from Mama Krissa and Papa Panos. As he's gotten a little bit older, there's a lot of books, children's books that kind of explain about, there's actually one that we have because Michael's a redhead and there's a little boy in it with red hair and explaining a child appropriateness of being adopted. He's really this year gotten more of understanding the two mommies and the two daddies. And I think part of it is meeting other families that have kids that are adopted. And so in his case, because his birth parents live in Greece, he sees pictures and they see pictures. It's a little bit different than if they were here in the States and we went to visit them in person, for example, right now. We will take him someday to Greece. But a lot of it, I think, is knowing your child and when you feel like it's the appropriate time to let them know. We, as having the open adoption, we wanted him to know and not wait, because we know we have families that wait till they're 18 to kind of let them know about their birth parents. And we personally, I have a family member that's adopted. I have an older half sister, and hers was a closed adoption. She's older. She's 74. She never got to meet her birth parents. It was a closed, sealed adoption in our case, because we do have that open adoption, and we, with their background in medicine, and they like to know like how he's doing medically, and they like to know how he's doing academically. And of course they want to know how he's doing emotionally and all of those pieces and the milestones. I think it just is an overtime process, and it's kind of fluid of when you decide to gradually, I think as he gets older, he'll understand more.
I think that's just amazing that even outside of the US, you've been able to maintain this relationship.
Yeah.
You said something that was a little bit striking to me about the excitement. And I'm thinking of when I had my children, things like that baby shower and all that anticipation leading up. As an adoptive parent, it sounds like at least in this particular case, you didn't have the opportunities in advance for those kind of celebratory type things. Is there something you would suggest to families who are listening? Like, how can they support their family members who are going to be adopting a baby?
In our case, because we had the adoption scam, and when you're doing your home study, we had a nursery set up. And so we had family members sending us things, even though we live cross country. A lot of our family primarily is in Oregon. And we were living at Virginia at the time. One of the biggest supports I think you can do is just reaching out and asking, how can you help? We had families that once we knew we were going up to Connecticut, sent us meals and, services, and sent us books and clothes and just like a normal, instead of having an in-person, it was more of a virtual shower of things coming. I mean, for a while it was like, okay, Amazon, sorry for all the boxes being delivered, right? Because we had a registry. And then when we got to come to Oregon, it was at Christmas, because we had to wait until finalization, and that was in October. And we knew we were coming out in December back to Oregon. And I did have friends that threw a small shower, because they knew we could only take so much stuff back, and because a lot of people had shipped stuff to us. I think part of it too, we were very fortunate when we got back into Virginia from Connecticut after going through the ICPC, that Aaron's dad and stepmom came out and we got to sleep for a little bit. Because many of you know that you're up. We had the alarm set every 2 hours, 2.5 hours to feed him because he wasn't crying and the natural response. Just having people around to help cook or to give you a little bit of a break. Because sometimes, just like having a normal newborn, having somebody watch them to go take a shower, to go grocery shopping, or to help you adjust with all the, taking the doctor to get weighed, or just that kind of support. And also, I think in our case, because our families were in Oregon at the time, it was, just reaching out for that support and talking about how can we help you? Because, when you're taking them in to get weighed, or you're starting all the physical therapies and the occupational therapies, which, by the way, it gets better. So new families, it does, and it's worth it. It is that long support of how can we support you? And emotionally is just as important as something tangible that they're sending. Those are the things I would recommend. And then one thing that we did is we had a book shower. So people sent books and they wrote messages for Michael. And then over time, we always, he's reading to us now very well. So we always explain who that person is to him too. We ask people to your favorite childhood book. We have books from probably, we had newborn, all like what board books, and then we have some that go clear up to like middle school, high school. So over time.
I love the book idea. That
Yeah.
was one of the favorite things that happened for me. Reading is so important. And I love the writing the messages. I love that. What do you think some of the biggest challenges adoptive families face?
I think one of them, and I hate to go to this first, is financial. It can be expensive. It's also, like in our case, it's an emotional roller coaster. The waiting, if you've ever seen the amount of paperwork, the, home study process is pretty daunting. It can be. Then once the baby is placed with you, you have home visits. Each state has a different amount of days that the birth parents can, for example, change their mind, which again, no judgment. For us, it was that 60 days was the emotional. And plus we had the scam. And so we were a little bit different situation where the other thing about, I know you asked about surprise, was the birth parents, when we went up, we had to rent a small U-Haul trailer because they gracefully gave us everything they had for him.
That's incredibly generous.
Oh my gosh, what happens if my house isn't perfect? Or, what happens if they don't think things are going, super well? Or because I write a report each time they come to see you, and they always ask you like, how are they doing? And I think in our situation, because Michael was special needs and we were doing so many different, medical appointments at that time, it was also trying to help educate the person that came to our social worker to come do the home visits. Because yes, we were having to do the weigh-ins. So we had to provide all the medical documentation that he was getting the best care that he could. And part of the reason we had to delay his growth hormone was because in the agency that he had been placed from, they were medical power of attorney until the adoption. And that was a challenge. So soon as that adoption at 8 months, we had the growth hormone. We went and saw Dr. Miller in Florida because we had to get permission to travel, which is why they were fine that it was a medical and they let us travel before it finalized in October. But we hadn't been able to go out to Oregon because it wasn't finalized yet to leave the state. So that was a challenge. I think it's also a challenge of that balance of determining when you're going to tell and how you tell your child that they're adopted, so that they don't feel like someone or their birth parents didn't care about them. That's not true at all. Michael's birth parents love him dearly, and we love them dearly. I think there's also the challenges of, like you said, the bond. Some people, we wore Michael a lot. I have a cute picture of him wearing him in front of, we were, DC area, in front of the giant Einstein statue. And I have one where he's by the Capitol, and we wore him a lot. I think the other challenge, and this is with any adoption or any kids in period, is how do I make that decision to go back to work?
Mhm.
And that's with any child, right? And also, how do I make sure that can tell his story and allow him to tell his story, because it really is his story too.
Yes. I hadn't really thought about this until you said it. That process of them continuing to come in the home visits and thinking, what does, as a parent of a newborn who isn't going through this process, how emotionally exhausted you are, physically exhausted, all of these things. And then to have strangers coming in and
Mhm.
potentially judging whether or not you're doing it good enough to keep this person in your life that you've fallen madly in love with. I,
Mhm.
I don't know why I hadn't considered that before, but gosh, that's got to be so
Mm.
difficult.
We were very fortunate. Our social worker was a very caring person. Jennifer Kelly from Special Angels had also interacted with her to kind of explain about a special needs adoption. She had never done a special needs adoption. The Catholic Charities up in Connecticut, where the birth parents, their social worker had never done a special needs adoption. Luckily, Nadine up there also reached out to Special Angels. And I think a little bit of the challenge too is with a special needs adoption, you do get a subsidy to help. You do get backup Medicaid, but you have to apply before the adoption finalizes. And so there's a process there too. In our case, the funding has helped with Michael's appointments and eventually, if for college and we have saved if there needs to be care. I think that's the other a little bit of a challenge is yes, you have someone coming in who may not understand that your child, for example, Michael couldn't hold his head up till he was 6 months old.
Right.
So they're looking at milestone development. And luckily, we had really good doctors at Children's National that would explain where he was. And yes, for his disorder, he was on typical milestones
Yeah.
because it could have been where they said, oh, we're concerned medically for him. But we kept really detailed notes and really all the doctor's notes. And we made sure we had updates from the doctor every time they came. But we are very fortunate. We had supportive people. And then with Jennifer Kelly with Special Angels helping us get, the subsidy and the Medicaid, because in the event something does happen that he needs backup insurance, we have that.
Mhm.
And then my husband has been fortunate to stay home with Michael while I work as an administrator. And because there's a lot of appointments, speech. Michael graduated out of occupational therapy. He still has aqua therapy and physical therapy and speech therapy at this time. And so you have pediatrician appointments and developmental pediatrician appointments and ophthalmology and all of those things. And so I think the biggest thing that you're thinking about, am I doing everything right? Because not everybody understands, like we were talking about earlier, Stacey, until you're in it and you know people that get it, yeah, you're concerned about the judgment.
Yes. Tell me a little bit about how people can get involved in supporting adoption causes and how having a national adoption month
Mhm.
benefits that.
The one thing that I always tell people is because there are many ways you can support. For example, you have local foster care closets. You may not yourself be able to adopt, but you've had children or you want to donate. Your local foster care closets are amazing because you have families who the kids show up literally with hardly anything. And the foster care closets, they can go and get things for the kids to help with that. That's just one example of something that you can do that, we always donate things to the foster care closets. I think the other thing you can do with adoption is there are sometimes babies that they need respite care for while they're waiting until they're placed with an adoptive family. And so you can get certified for that. I think in additional, you have agencies that the birth parents are helping to find adoptive parents. And also you have children in the foster care system who you'll see waiting children sites. You can help sponsor and have things sent to them anonymously. At holiday time, you have agencies, especially with foster care. Definitely the holidays, they have like the Tree of Joy where you can donate things. And then you can obviously reach out to them and find out, how you can support. Some of them have fundraising events. There's an agency here in Oregon. Every year they have a Princess for the Day and a Prince for a Day event for kids in foster care and kids that have been adopted. And they literally have like the Miss Oregon, and they do their hair and their makeup and costumes, kind of like Bippity Boppity Boutique at Disney World. So there's a variety of different things you can do. There are agencies in foster care that they have people scrapbook. So that way the kids have a scrapbook of their life. And there's so many different things you can do. My biggest advice is reach out and find out how you can support, because each agency or Child Protective or DHS has different things that they could use. You can also donate airline miles. So you can donate airline miles for foster care or adoptive or for medical. So you can actually, if you have miles that you're going to lose, you can actually have them donated to different organizations.
I
Yeah.
love that. A little bit of a personal story. My aunt, my mom's sister, she and my uncle were foster parents, the whole time I was growing up. And, for me growing up, I just thought that was normal. That everybody does this. It wasn't until I was a little bit older when I started to realize how unique it is and how great that need is. There was somebody that lived with them for several years who they did not adopt, that I would still consider my cousin to this day, and they did adopt 2 children through foster care. And the youngest, I would say, he was supposed to be one of those weekend kind of hold in place foster care situations until being able to move to the next more permanent place. And it was Thanksgiving weekend, and he was 5 months old. And that boy, who is now going to be 28 this year, next year, oh my gosh, is the joy of my life. Until I had my own children, there's certainly something different, but that he will always have this special place. So I think even when we're thinking about getting involved and helping, it's amazing how kids through adoption and through foster care can touch the lives of everybody else, not just the families, the mom and dad who are adopting them. And
you'll see a lot of
changed us.
You'll also see a lot of families, they may have GoFundMes or they may have events to help raise for their adoption fees, because depending on the type of adoption, Michael's case is private adoption. There's expenses for the adoption process. There's expenses for the lawyer fees. Pay when the home study, and you pay, for example, the home visits. And so helping support that during the process is also something that you can do. But I think the biggest gift also is just the support emotionally and support of listening, giving breaks to people when they do need respite care, or just how can I help with something like, even at foster care closets, they need people that help wash all the toys and the clothes and anything like that, or help with fundraising or help with awareness and advocacy. That's the one thing I would say overall, being a Prader-Willi mom, being that I'm in education, is educating people about the disorder and educating and being like, no, that's a misconception. Or, where are you hearing that information? Or directing them to, like Prader-Willi USA or the Foundation for Prader-Willi Research, so that they actually can see, I don't want to say the truths, but about our kids. Our kids are amazing. And I think that's the other aspect of the advocacy too, is so that you understand that our kids are amazing, that you have families that have adopted children. I know numerous Prader-Willi families that have, and that supporting them is huge. And supporting any family with any child is huge. And not to be stereotypical, it does take a village to raise our kids.
Oh,
and
100%.
Yeah. And that's why I've always appreciated the help we get starting from day one from Prader-Willi USA, because we were able to have very candid conversations, because you do have questions. You do have questions about the different aspects and characteristics of Prader-Willi. And that's one thing, like when I've worked with families and talked to them about, potential adoptive parents as well as potential birth parents going to make a potential adoption plan, they want to know the full spectrum, and they want to know the good things, and they want to know the challenging things too. My biggest thing is to always tell them there's always people to support. Prader-Willi USA, I know Stacy, you came and helped for an IEP meeting. Times it is just being able to talk to different moms or dads or family members who get it. when you start thinking about challenges of the holidays and thinking about, okay, the food anxiety and food security, people that get it, it's really helpful. People that have had the experience of different things happening is incredible, because when you'll see sometimes you go into something and people just make an assumption, or, oh, it's not, you're just doing a strict diet, it's your choice. No, it's a medical diet, and it's just nice. I think another thing you can do to support is, I know there are organizations where special needs moms or dads, there's retreats, and you can donate and do scholarships to help them get to have a retreat. My biggest advice also would be to find your network, find your people that you can call in the good times and you can call in the times where you need to cry, and that it's okay and it's not selfish to go away for a weekend and get support.
Thank you for saying that, because you're right. I think that it's- I think it happens for many, many families, but I see it even that be more of a pronounced issue in our community. And you cannot do all of the things that you need to and want to do for your children with Prader-Willi or without, if you're not taking care of yourself. It
Yep.
reminds me of the whole airplane thing, putting your mask on before theirs.
Yep.
And if it worries you and you get that guilt feeling, I encourage you to look at it as a gift for your child. That
Yeah.
instead of, I'm doing this for me, I'm doing this, yes, for me, but when I'm a better version of me, I'm also a better parent.
Yeah. And again, it's not the cliche of, you have to have your cup full too. And I am probably, being that I'm an administrator and I've got employees and, a husband and a child with Prader-Willi, often you forget to take care of you.
Yes.
And often you are natural as a mom to be taking care of people. Not saying dads don't either, but
There is nothing
um,
as maternal instinct.
it is. And that was the other thing, I think, as an adoptive mom. Some people were like, did you feel the same bonding? The moment he was in my arms, yes, he was my child. The moment, you're holding him, and I have the sweetest picture of him on my chest and his hands up by the necklace. And he is our child. When people ask us, unless they're really close people, we don't say he's adopted straight out. He's our child.
Right.
We are very honest too if someone asks, but it's also his story to tell. And so when he's appropriate and he feels like he wants to tell his story, and, we over time, like I said earlier, mentioned he is getting to see more parts of the story over time. I think part of it too is it's okay to take a break and have other people love on your kid for a weekend or a night, because I think sometimes as an adoptive parent of a special needs child, you're so protective that you forget that you need to go and do different things for yourself. Like go out on a date once in a while, or go to a movie, or have the hidden treats up locked possibly in a fridge in, your closet. Or, you go out for a blizzard while he's at a different event, right? So don't forget to take care of yourself. And like I said, I'm probably not the best example, but lately I've just had to say, you know what? I have to have a space for me. One thing that I have done to help in that space is working on my doctorate, and it's in education, leadership, and policy. And so some of the coursework I've been able to actually write about children with special needs and educational advocacy. And for me, that's one of my spaces, the academia part. So find your space, find your niche of things that you can do that's going to bring joy to yourself when there are those tough times.
I love that you found that space for you, but from kind of our perspective and, my perspective from PWS, I thank you. Because even though the work that you're doing helps fill your cup, it's going to benefit all of our kids. And that is, a tremendous gift that you're giving back to the entire community.
Yeah, it's great because here in Oregon, if there are families, and I have a couple in California too, where I virtually have attended their IEPs and helped be like, no, this is actual state and federal law. Educational meetings that I serve on in the state of Oregon, even on assessment, which is my background, how are we making this successful for our students that is going to truly allow them to show what they're able to do? What accommodations need to be in place? What needs to be in place in the classroom? What needs to be in place for our kids to be safe and have a high quality education, and to advocate that our kids can be in regular mainstream classrooms, that our kids are amazing, and that our kids are sweet, our kids want to help people, our kids want to learn. The joy I see of Michael when he goes to school, he loves to go to school, see his friends, he loves to learn, he loves to show you what he's done. And just like every kid, that was probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that was given to us by Dr. Miller, was treat him like every other kid and don't let him win. So that was, yeah. So when he's trying to push your buttons, nope. And yeah, be firm, warm demander. And so we do. He is literally the joy of our lives.
Well, he's precious.
We cannot imagine our life without him.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your story, being willing to talk with us. And,
Sure.
From a PWSA perspective, also, thank you for speaking to so many families who are interested in adopting, birth parents who are considering an adoption plan, and doing that in such a way that is so warm and lacks judgment. When I've talked to some birth parents who are trying to make that decision, one of the things I hear over and over again is how fearful they are of being judged. And you're able to have those conversations and make people feel at ease and recognize the gift that they're giving to somebody else. So thank you.
Yeah, that's something like I was talking to Stacey earlier about. When I was teaching, I would always tell my students, you don't know what you're going to do till you're in the thick of it in a situation. No judgment. I always just listen to families and I tell them our story. I also, I've cried on the phone with families. I have helped them to find the resources that they have decided to make a special needs adoption plan, to find that support, to find ethical agencies to work with. And
so important.
Yes. And to know who, that it's helpful for them to make sure the agency gives them the counseling and the support and the choice to who they're going to select as the potential adoptive parents, and to have them think about, you can still have a very active role in your child's life at your comfort level, and that, you want to make it clear to the adoptive parents what that role is and how much contact. The other thing I've done is help educate and advocate in the regards to medical practitioners in NICUs. Like at OHSU, we go and we've taken Michael and talked to future future doctors, med students about Prader-Willi. And we've talked about, if it's a newly diagnosed family, how to connect with Prader-Willi USA, how to have mentors and folks help from day one, because you'll need that support. And which is why it's amazing with Prader-Willi USA, we have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week line. You need support. We had a family the other night on Facebook have their child go to the emergency room with a medical condition, and messaging them saying, look, here's the number to call. And yes, people will answer the phone. We had scarlet fever and we called and immediately someone answered. So from day one, you will have support.
I think that's one of the most special things about this community. I've been in the special needs space for a very long time, and there's something really special about the PWS community. So,
we're a family.
Yes, I welcome people. Keep joining our family.
We are very much a family. We very much, when we get all together, it's a very special time in the sense that it's joyful. There are tears at times too, but we support each other. And I think that is the best thing. Like, I have some Prader-Willi moms that literally, with some things that have happened recently, who've reached out, how can I help? Can I help take Michael for a couple days or help get him to school? Or we all do that together. And I would agree, our community is amazing. And we're also huge advocates, families that have been able to go to DC and to support and advocate with, lobby. You have families that are helping each other with education, or families that are helping with the medical, helping We were very fortunate the first 2 times we went to Florida. A Prader-Willi family, the Pudneys, hosted us in their home. And to see their son, Paxton, and see how well he was doing and bond and actually have families that open arms. There are families in Florida when you come, literally open the doors. Same thing with us, with OHSU. We have families across Oregon from Southern Eastern Oregon. We open our home and they come stay. It's a very welcoming and loving community.
I love that. And I think because PWS is so rare, when situations like that happen and people are being generous and opening and welcoming, for some families, it's the first time they meet another child with PWS in person. And it makes it feel not so rare anymore.
It does. I can remember Michael was 7 months old when we went to Foundation for Prader-Willi Research, their conference. And just to be in the new parent space, and Michael's a baby, to meet other families, and then having been able to do like Prader-Willi USA events, as well as the virtual conference, even though it's a virtual space, you're still chatting with people and you're still interacting and being able to have those times together because people get it. Being around families that get it is crucial. It's vital. And it's a whole nother level of filling your cup and seeing our kids, how well they're doing, and seeing our kids play together, and we can talk about how things are going and how we can help each other. That's the biggest thing I would say is find your network and find the people that literally have your back and you have their back in any situation, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Thank you for listening to this episode of PWS United. If you want to learn more about Prader-Willi syndrome and how PWSA USA is making strides in advocacy, family support, and research, visit www.pwsausa.org. And while you're there, we encourage you to sign up for our Pulse email newsletter to stay informed about the latest news, resources, and events. Don't forget to subscribe to the PWS United podcast so you never miss an episode. Our team is always available to support families and their loved ones living with PWS 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You can call us at 941-312-0400 or email info@pwsausa.org. Catch a new episode next Tuesday, and until then, have a great week.